In the natural sciences, an apex predator is a predator that exists at the very top of the food chain.
Max Verstappen has extended his lead in the 2024 Formula 1 Championship this weekend at the US Grand Prix. He didn't only beat Lando Norris in 2 races, he beat a whole range of enemies who were out there to see him lose. I'm a huge fan of Formula 1 and I'm hyper focused on anything that happens in the sport. I feel compelled to make this video about the obstacles Max Verstappen needs to overcome before he can call himself a 4-time world champion. I made a list of 6 points. Watch till the end to find out everything. I'm Wimbo. Here's 3 seconds to leave a like. 6. The RB20. Max Verstappen had a great relationship with the RB19, the car he drove in 2023. He won 19 races in that car, which included a run of 10 in a row. Unfortunately, the Red Bull design team have reached a plateau and has run into problems. This made it very hard for Verstappen to win races, and he hasn't done so in 9 races now, although he did nab the sprint race in Austin. Still, he managed to maximize results and bring that car to places where it shouldn't be realistically. This is asking a lot of him when it comes to setup and just driving around issues to get the most out of his package. He is fighting this package and I can't wait to see him in a balanced car again that does exactly what he wants. A bit like the sprint race. It's time to do that in normal races again to beat number 5 on the list. 5. Lando Norris. It's quite obvious that Lando Norris is the first opponent Max needs to beat to win the championship. He's currently 57 points ahead and it's looking good. It looked to be quite a challenge in the last 8 races or so when the RB20 struggled with the balance, and it turned out that Red Bull had made some errors in the design, as I mentioned before. At the US GP, things seem to be sorted again, at least for this track, and that gives hope for the next 5 races. Norris has been a good opponent and has scored 3 wins this season. He could have won more, but he and his team failed to capitalize a few times. Although I have a lot of time for Lando, I can't say he's the biggest challenge Max faces to win the championship this year. I also think that Lewis Hamilton or Charles Leclerc would have gotten more out of this strong package. But we'll never know for sure. Some of the points he didn't score were due to the number 4 on the list. 4. McLaren team. The McLaren team is still pretty fresh when it comes to title battles, so you can forgive them for lacking some quick decision making under pressure and such. They do have a big mouth on them, like they won 8 constructors titles in a row or something. Especially Zak Brown is very vocal and tries to turn up the heat at every possible moment. Andrea Stella gets sucked into these things too, even though his nature is much calmer. A bit like Mattia Binotto, who I also like very much. Zak Brown was running his mouth, for instance, about the adjustable bib thing on the Red Bull car, making it sound like the tool, which is on the open source list and has been there for 3 years, is blatant cheating, and the FIA needs to punish Red Bull for it, according to him. The last thing he said was that Red Bull staff needs to sign an affidavit to make sure they don't use it when it's not allowed to be used. How f***ing pathetic is that? I bet he'd love to see 100 points being taken off Max and Checo, because that's the only way he can ensure winning 2 prizes this season. What makes it extra hypocritical of Zak Brown is the fact that McLaren has been forced to change their car twice this season thanks to irregularities on the car. First, there were these air holes, which allowed them to cool the tires quicker, and then recently they were caught using a rear wing, which opened up at high speed, giving them a mini DRS. Still, Zak Brown is adamant they want to win the McLaren way. I think he refers to winning fairly, and not by cheating, like spying on Ferrari for instance. The problem with the noise Zak is making is that he riles everyone up in the paddock, including number 3 on the list. 3. The other teams. The other teams usually go about their own business of getting their car upgraded and working with their drivers, making sure they don't kill each other. Unfortunately, with Zak Brown riling everyone up, even a nice guy like Fred Vasseur gets involved in accusing Red Bull of anything. I always laugh when I see those team bosses be friendly with each other, knowing that in the blink of an eye, they're at each other's throats again. Remember how Toto Wolff and Christian Horner fought? Next season, they might pair up to fight Zak Brown and Fred Vasseur. You never know. In any case, Max Verstappen is forced to fend off questions about stuff other team bosses say all the time. And on track, he's often alone fighting against 2 drivers of the same team, as Perez is nowhere to be seen. Max Verstappen is lucky in the sense that these teams have headstrong, dominant drivers who would rather fight their teammates than work together. But still, it's a lot of work for one guy. And then another entity is working against him, which is number 2 on the list. The FIA and FOM. The FIA and the FOM seem to be enemies, but they need each other to keep existing. The FOM needs rules enforced by a group of people with experience, and the FIA is most likely heavily reliant on the money the FOM pays. Now this is a controversial opinion and it needs to be taken with a little more than a grain of salt, but sometimes the feeling creeps up that some decisions made on and off the track by the FIA are made to create a better championship. There, I said it. Feels good. Would the FIA have made such a fuss if Magnussen had said "f***ed" during a press conference? Do we see instant reactions from the FIA when there are suspicions surrounding the McLaren car? I have a feeling FIA is much more reluctant to give penalties to Norris, as seen in the weird braking incident in the US sprint race. I'm not saying Norris 100% needed to get a penalty, but Alonso did weird braking in Australia and he got a crazy big penalty. Now Norris did get a penalty for overtaking off track in Austin, but there was no way around that. I agree that it's not helping my case here, but I'll still continue. The rear wing situation was sorted without imposing penalties and with a lot of beating around the bush. It took months, whereas the bib situation was dealt with immediately. And I have felt this before. It was the famous 2021 season where Hamilton didn't get a grid penalty for impeding, but Verstappen did get a grid penalty for a double yellow that shouldn't have been waived. Hamilton needed to gain points on Verstappen for the epic showdown in Abu Dhabi. All this to create a more exciting title fight, which would benefit the FIA and FOM. Now I can hear you say FIA has nothing to gain, but deep down their whole existence is based around F1. If the FOM says, hey, we're gonna start a new competition and you can keep F1 for the remaining years, FIA has a big problem. I know this is simplified and I know it's not gonna happen. It's just to amplify that both parties need each other, okay? Don't comment on this below. So Max Verstappen also has this to deal with. And then there's the number 1 on the list. 1. The media. I've made a video about this before, and if you haven't seen it, I'll leave it up as an end screen for you. But F1 media is mainly British, and they can't help egging on any driver opposing Verstappen. The Sky Sports F1 commentary does it, the pundits after the race do it, and the writing press on the many platforms do it too. They grab a story like the bib thing and make it huge in an attempt to help McLaren out with their attempt to disrupt Red Bull and Verstappen. Ironically, McLaren has changed all their wings for the rest of the season because the FIA have said they fall outside of the regulations. So if McLaren has rear wings that fall outside of the regulations, isn't that a reason for huge headlines and all kinds of conjecture? Well no, because that doesn't fit the agenda of the British run F1 media. We saw a beautiful battle between a quicker Lando Norris and a slower Max Verstappen in Austin, with the Dutchman keeping the Englishman at bay for 10 laps or so. Norris tried it around the outside, but Verstappen was at the apex quicker and controlled the corner. Norris overtook Verstappen off track and was told to keep the position as his silly team interpreted the rules wrong. And Norris received a 5-second penalty, which saw Verstappen get 3rd place. He extended his lead again after winning the sprint race a day earlier. So what do you think the main story is in the F1 media? Norris not attacking so well? McLaren not telling him to give the position back? Nah. The story is that the rules for overtaking are wrong. Because Englishman Norris lost a podium, the rules need to be looked at. The Max Verstappen rule, part 6. Max Verstappen isn't bothered by it at all. If the rules change again, he'll stick to them on the limit and people who want to see him lose will cry again. The rules are the same for every driver and Norris is picking up on these things. When Max Verstappen waited for Lando to make a move in Austria and quickly took the turn, it was considered dangerous driving and moving under braking. But Lando did it in Austin and we didn't hear a peep. Now, there's one thing I want to address here. People may say that I start to sound like Team LH with my complaints and conspiracies. Because they said everyone was working against Lewis Hamilton, even though he was helped from every direction. I don't recall the media counting points and races when Vettel chased Hamilton in the standings, begging and pleading for Ferrari to sacrifice Raikkonen to beat Lewis Hamilton. That did happen with Norris and Piastri. The F1 media thought that that system, which could change the wheels of the cars while driving, was a piece of brilliant engineering. But a device for Red Bull on the open source list to lower a car is used to make them look like cheats. There have been tons of questionable situations with Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, which have been wiped under the table just because Lewis Hamilton is English. They even say he's a clean driver. Anyway, I got this out of my system. Max Verstappen will win the 2024 championship in a team that will most likely finish third in the standings. He's inside that car, getting the best out of that package, and in doing so, he's beating all the enemies that I've mentioned before. He knows about the Apex rules because he is an Apex predator. Subscribe. Take care now. Doei doei.